This is the most obvious comparison to do outside possibly Avengers and Justice League, but one I put off for a very long time, largely because I had done a ton of research into these movies when I did earlier videos on them and didn't want to dive into them again, but also because I really didn't want to watch Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice again.
Sir, get down. Sir, I said get down.
Get them back up here.
Hey, don't do it. Hey!
The suspect has been identified as Wallace Vernon Keith. He'll be arraigned on charges of vandalism, resisting arrest, and the felony charge of making terrorist threats.
To even things out, the heroes in Civil War will be Chris Evans as Captain America and Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. Even though they are on opposite sides throughout the movie, they have reasons that are both honorable and well-meaning. Iron Man always gets some meat for his character whenever he does a significant role. Civil War is no exception. He feels guilt for creating Ultron. He, more than anyone else, is responsible for creating the biggest villain the Avengers had ever faced at that point. And it makes sense how a guy who was all cocky to the government in Iron Man 2
It's working. We're safe. America is secure. You want my property? You can't have it. But I did you a big favor. I have successfully privatized world peace.
would now be the guy who was quick to fall in line.
Oh, that's Charles Spencer, by the way. He's a great kid. Computer engineering degree, 3.6 GPA. He decided to spend his summer building sustainable housing for the poor, guess where? Sokovia. He wanted to make a difference, I suppose. I mean, we won't know because we dropped a building on him while we were kicking ass. There's no decision-making process here. We need to be put in check. Whatever form that takes, I'm game.
He has seen what happens when he's given too much power, and the result killed many, many people. One of my issues with Captain America throughout his movies is his lack of personal change. Granted, that is largely the framework of the character. He is the larger-than-life symbol for what America should be, but never is. A man who will do what he thinks is right to a fault. The good news is, he is so humble and well-meaning that typically what he thinks is right really is right. For the first time, Cap's good intentions blow up in his face. In The Winter Soldier, we learn, along with Cap, that Hydra killed Howard Stark. The human fault is that we frequently don't do things unless it's convenient or unless it's unavoidable. We learn that Cap falls victim to this as well. He never reveals this fact to Tony. It's not something you drop into everyday conversation, but it's something Tony deserves to know all the same. That proves to be a massive error, a live omission. Tony never had a chance to process this information. Then add to it the reveal that his parents were killed by Bucky. Granted, he was under Hydra's control, but Tony is being hit with all this information at once. Tony was with his friends, and now suddenly with the man who killed his parents and the man who lied to him about it, and has spent 2 movies defending the man who killed his parents.
Did you know? I didn't know it was him.
Shut me, Rogers. Did you know? Yes.
It's easy to see why he loses it. It's impossible to know if Cap telling Tony about Hydra's involvement with his parents' death would have prevented this fight, but certainly would have put them in a better position. Tony would be processing a lot less. There is not a single instance in all of history where the world has been made better by a lie. People need to learn to become better, and if your facts are lies, then you are learning the wrong lessons. Cap learns that the hard way in this movie.
I guess I thought by not telling you about your parents, I was sparing you, but I can see now that I was really sparing myself, and I'm sorry.
In Batman v Superman, we have Ben Affleck as Batman and Henry Cavill as Superman. They have arcs, they are just bizarre and make no sense within the narrative. Let's start with what is shockingly the clearest arc, Batman. Upon seeing the destruction of Metropolis, Batman decides that Superman must be stopped, then proceeds to do nothing for 18 months. His reasoning is simple.
He has the power to wipe out the entire human race, and if we believe there's even a 1% chance that he is our enemy, we have to take it as an absolute certainty. And we have to destroy him.
I said it was simple, not logical. Anyways, he builds an Iron Man-style Batman suit, clearly inspired from The Dark Knight Returns, and steals kryptonite from Lex Luthor, which is apparently part of Luthor's plan, which we'll get to that clusterfuck later. Anyways, he does some working out, which just baffles me. Does he honestly think that any amount of working out will help him beat Superman? In what universe can Batman beat Superman in a purely physical confrontation? Might as well pit Bambi against Godzilla. Anyways, he makes kryptonite gas bombs like in The Dark Knight Returns, except in The Dark Knight Returns, Batman wants to beat Superman, not kill him. Here, he wants to kill him, so why not make kryptonite bullets and shoot Superman with them? Anyways, he also makes a spear, because God forbid we miss out on a Jesus metaphor. Gotta get a spear of destiny in there. Batman is literally ready to murder Superman in cold blood when suddenly the scene that the world mocked happens.
We're letting him kill Martha!
What does that mean? Why did you say that name?
Find him! Save Martha!
But why?
So many things wrong. Why would Superman suddenly, in a moment of crisis, refer to his mother by her first name? Why would the revelation that Superman's mom's name is Martha mean anything to Batman? He knows Superman has parents.
I bet your parents taught you that you mean something.
So that is not the reveal. Just that his mother shares the name of Batman's mom means something, I guess? If one of their moms had a different name, Superman would be dead. Anyways, since they have moms with the same name, they are now best friends, and Batman learns that with the power of friendship, anything is possible, even saving Martha, and more murder.
A little more like manslaughter than actual murder.
Superman is a bit more iffy because he's just so goddamn nebulous, just like he was in Man of Steel, so at least they have continuity, though they lose a lot of it when Superman talks about how he is Superman for his father, and is clearly referring to Jonathan.
I've been living my life the way my father saw it. Righting wrongs for a ghost. Superman was never real. Just the dream of a farmer from Kansas.
Jonathan was literally the voice telling him to hide from humanity, even if it means people may die.
What was I supposed to do? Just let him die?
Maybe.
Jor-El was the voice encouraging him to be Superman.
You're as much a child of Earth now as you are of Krypton. You can embody the best of both worlds.
But that is all beside the point. Superman dislikes Batman because he's a vigilante. You could argue that Superman dislikes all the killing Batman is doing, but Superman kills too. There are no real clear morals to these characters, so why Superman has a problem with Batman killing is not clear at all. As for his issue of Batman being a vigilante, it just comes off as pure hypocrisy. We also see that Superman seems not to enjoy the limelight that has been shown upon him. But he is supposed to have an arc where he declares Earth is his home and dies killing Doomsday in the most pointless way possible, meaning this movie wastes elements from both The Dark Knight Returns and The Death of Superman in one. Sure, why combine elements in a way that makes sense when you can just combine whatever you want and let the narrative be damned? I've been at this long enough. Superman and Batman are just a hypocrite and a murderer, respectively. Iron Man and Captain America have clear arcs and motivations. Point for Marvel.
Is this part of the plan?
Well, my plan was go easy on him. You want to switch it up?
Holy crap, so many of these MCU movies have such huge supporting casts that editing them becomes an enormous chore. We have Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow, Anthony Mackie as Falcon, Sebastian Stan as Bucky, Chadwick Boseman as Black Panther, Don Cheadle as Rhodey, Paul Bettany as Vision, Elizabeth Olsen as Scarlet Witch, Jeremy Renner as Hawkeye, Tom Holland as Spider-Man, Paul Rudd as Ant-Man, Emily Van Camp as Sharon Carter, William Hurt as Thunderbolt Ross, Martin Freeman as Everett Ross, Frank Grillo as Crossbones, Patrick Swayze as Dalton, Marissa Tomei as Aunt May, John Candy as King T'Chaka, John Slattery as Howard Stark, and Hope Davis as Maria Stark. Damn Marvel movies and their ability to just pile on characters and probably most importantly still let the movie work despite it, when honestly it should just be a clusterfuck. Every character has their moment, every character has a reason for being there, every character is memorable. No character feels forced or unnecessary. There are movies with far smaller casts that feel way more overloaded. Somehow Civil War just works when it really shouldn't. And since we're on the topic of overloaded movies, seems like a good time to talk about Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. Just the title feels overloaded. The supporting cast here is Amy Adams as Lois Lane, Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, Holly Hunter as Senator Finch, Diane Lane as Martha Kent, Laurence Fishburne as Perry White, Jeremy Irons as Alfred, Harry Lennox as Swanwick, Tio Okamoto as Mercy Graves, Patrick Swayze as Dalton, Scoot McNairy as Wallace Keefe, Michael Shannon as Zod's Corpse, Callan Mulvey as KG Beast, Ezra Miller as The Flash, Tom Hardy as Venom, Joe Morton as Silas Stone, Ray Fisher as weird-looking CGI background body parts, TJ Miller as Met Emoji, Michael Cassidy as Jimmy Olsen, and Jason Momoa as Khal Drogo. It's staggering how useless almost all these characters are. So many could be written out, and the movie would be all the better for it. Sure, Gal Gadot is good and one of the better aspects of this movie, but if you write her out, then you avoid the obvious issue of why not just have her use the spear against Doomsday at the end. You would also lose that email that is just the audience watching her as she watches 3 post-credit scenes back to back. To get the idea of how completely and utterly these characters are wasted, let's look at Lois Lane's story. I guess they wanted to give Amy Adams something to do because a smaller role like Sharon Carter's in Civil War would be more appropriate. Here, Lois is seen out of the country meeting with a terrorist. Once she is out of sight, everyone around her is killed. Superman is then blamed for these deaths because Superman would need a gun to kill people.
Do you want to play rough? Okay. Say hello to my little friend. Do you want to play rough? Okay.
Now, I know in the Ultimate Edition, they do expand on this, showing the bodies being burned to look more like Superman's heat vision, but then we see her looking into a bullet used at the site trying to clear Superman's name.
Covered from the scene of the firefight in the desert. Not sold anywhere commercially in the world, even black market.
Now, if he burned them to death, the bullet would be meaningless, but if he shot them, then the bullet means something. Since the bullet means something, I guess Superman is gunning down people all over the world, but somehow it gets stupider. Instead of using generic bullets, the bullets used are made specifically by LexCorp.
Metal was developed by a private company.
What company?
LexCorp.
Lex Luthor.
He also had private security contractors at the desert compound.
Lex Luthor might as well have engraved his name on each and every bullet. The levels of stupidity with this story thread are just mind-boggling. The entire supporting cast in Batman v Superman is best represented by Jimmy Olsen's treatment in this movie. Here he is, an iconic Superman character, and what do they do with him? They waste him for no good reason at all. The photographer could have been anybody. Hell, he could have been written out of the movie, but instead they throw a character in there just to waste him. Point for Marvel.
You were pulling your punches.
These two movies have very similar stories. A big, tragic event from a previous movie has left the government wondering if these superpowered beings have a place here. Meanwhile, an outside force is doing everything in his power to get the heroes to fight one another. An explosion at a government meeting makes the situation worse. After a brawl, the heroes realize they have a bigger bad to fight and team up for a final fight. I've described both these movies, with the biggest deviation being that the alliance in Civil War is quickly torn apart by Cap's omission from Tony. In Batman v Superman, the alliance is maintained to the point where Batman calls Superman his friend just minutes after trying to kill him.
It's okay. I'm a friend of your son's.
I figured. The cape?
If given only a minute more of screen time, the two would surely be exchanging BFF bracelets.
Wow, I don't know what to say. What do you say? I don't know. It's a bracelet, isn't it? And it's engraved, too. Check it out. To my best bud.
Civil War is primarily about choice and responsibility. In many ways, those ideas coexist. As people, we all make choices and have to take responsibility for those choices. If you did something, why? And the inverse, if you didn't do something, why?
Look, when you can do the things that I can, but you don't, and then the bad things happen, they happen because of you.
All the characters have a choice to make in this movie. The two most respected superheroes have very different opinions on an issue that will tear them apart. Tony thinks government oversight is the best way for the Avengers to continue. Steve just saw a government agency get overrun by Hydra and thinks that the best hands for something like the Avengers is their own.
Tony, if someone dies on your watch, you don't give up.
Who said we're giving up?
We are for not taking responsibility for our actions. This document just shifts the blame.
Sam wholeheartedly agrees with Cap, while Rhodey is fairly quick to back up Tony. Vision looks at it logically and ends up backing Tony. I would argue that his logic is flawed, as it runs by the assumption that the world-threatening events would stop if the heroes stopped heroing, but I can see where he's coming from. Scarlet Witch feels guilt over the explosion in Lagos, but ends up backing Cap. Black Widow backs Tony because she hopes by jumping on board early, they can maintain some control of the situation. Black Panther backs Tony because he blames Bucky for the death of his father, which brings us to the next theme in the movie, revenge.
Vengeance has consumed you. It's consuming them. I'm done letting it consume me.
Black Panther seeks revenge against Bucky. Zemo seeks revenge against the Avengers. Iron Man seeks revenge against Bucky. It is this desire for revenge that does the most damage to the heroes in the movie. The Russo brothers refer to this as a movie about divorce.
This is a film about divorce. It's a family getting divorced from one another.
And it does make sense when viewed from that lens. Early on, the parties try to talk through things. They don't want to break up, but they have hit a wall figuring out how to move forward on this issue. Steve is certain he is right, while Tony is certain he is right. They have irreconcilable differences, which is undoubtedly the most common reason given for a divorce. They cannot just walk away as you should in a breakup. What they are disagreeing on is the very nature of how they should continue. If Steve continues on his path, he will become a criminal, and it will be Tony's job to stop him. Part of the reason the comic book arc resonates so well with the public is because it showed superheroes suffering through the same political divides that the country was going through at that time during the years of George W. Bush. The political divide has only gotten worse since that arc. The movie again shows the heroes divided by what they think is right. Neither is wrong per se, but their perspectives are clear, which makes their divide all the more understandable and heartbreaking. Batman v Superman is about, well, that's actually a good question. Hypocrisy is my best guess.
The Daily Planet criticizing those who think they're above the law is a little hypocritical, wouldn't you say? Considering every time your hero saves a cat out of a tree, you read a puff-piece editorial.
Batman wants to kill Superman because Superman saved the planet by battling Zod, but also inadvertently killed a lot of people. Superman wants to stop Batman because he's a vigilante that kills a lot of people. Lex Luthor wants to kill Superman because he's godlike and acts like he's stronger than everyone else, and makes big choices that an average human wouldn't make. Batman kills to save people. Superman kills to save people. And Lex Luthor plays God whenever he can. They are all hypocrites. It's not a very strong theme, but it's the best we've got here. Batman and Superman can put aside their hypocrisy and save the day. Lex Luthor cannot, and is put in jail. It's the closest thing to a theme this movie has, so it's what we have to go with. Whereas Civil War weaves its themes into a cohesive narrative that allows all the characters a piece of the story, Batman v Superman stumbles through it with no real idea of what it's actually doing. What really shows the difference between these two movies is that in Civil War, the heroes make mistakes, and they show regret at the lives lost due to their mistakes. Never once does Superman show any regret for how reckless he was in Man of Steel. Think about how Batman killed people in his first attempt to take the kryptonite from Lex. Have you considered who he's killing? These are probably paid cards Lex hired. Maybe they're ex-cons, maybe they're ex-cops, or veterans. In this very moment, the only crime we know that they are committing, and they may not even be aware of it, is that they are committing a customs violation. Is that truly a crime that deserves the punishment of having Batman disintegrate your body in a hail of bullets? And never once does Batman show any regret for the lives he takes. In Civil War, the heroes want to do better and just have a disagreement on how best to do that. In Batman v Superman, they simply do not care and will kill anyone without a moment's hesitation who stand in their way. Point for Marvel.
Okay, tiny dude is big now. He's big now.
Civil War has some very solid effects, but honestly just has a flat lighting scheme that most MCU movies have, and it's just rather boring. It's good that everything is clear and visible, and they aren't trying to hide any bad effects, so that's good overall. But still, it would be nice to be a bit more visually creative. On the other side, Batman v Superman is all the worst of Zack Snyder's aesthetic. All the darkness, none of the cool looking visuals, all the CGI looks fine, but when it's dark, it's easier to make it look good. Good looking CGI in daytime, which is where we see a lot of it in Civil War, is a lot harder. The colors in Superman's suit get slightly brighter. That's the best I can say about the visuals here. Sadly, even that is diminished. With the movie being so dark, the color improvement in Superman's suit is negligible. Outside the CGI, the visuals are nothing amazing in Civil War, yet still better than in Batman v Superman, which is just ugly. Point for Marvel.
Look, I really don't want to hurt you.
I wouldn't stress about it.
Oh!
Batman v Superman has surprisingly little action. There's so little that they literally inject a dream sequence with an action scene in the middle of the movie. What we have is solid if a bit baffling. It's similar to Man of Steel, where sure, the action looks cool, but betrays the characters. Batman is just a gun-wielding psychopath, which begs the question why the Joker is still alive. Superman is fine killing terrorists if Lois is in danger, although technically she isn't, because Superman could disarm this guy before he pulls the trigger, but instead he just kills him. When we get to the titular battle, Batman has set up tons of weapons to weaken Superman, like high-tech sonic devices, kryptonite gas, traps, and sinks. However, he only has one weapon that can kill him, and it's a spear. The one lethal weapon he makes to kill the man he wants to kill, and it's one of the most primitive weapons ever. I've already covered why this is, but it's still stupid. Civil War has some of the best action in the MCU, which is saying something since the MCU has some great action. The beginning fight at the knockoff CDC, the fight at Bucky's apartment that continues onto the street, the battle between Cap and Iron Man at the end are all fantastic, and they all pale in comparison to the airport fight, which is one of the best superhero fights in movie history. This is a fairly easy point for Marvel.
Gotta help me, Wanda. Look, you want to mope, you can go to high school. You want to make amends, you get off your ass.
The sound design in Civil War is fine. Rhodey, Vision, Scarlet Witch have some cool sounds for their powers. But for the most part, everything is exactly as you'd expect sound design-wise. The score, on the other hand, is awesome. It's a score by Henry Jackman, who's doing fantastic work that keeps flying under the radar. He did this, The Winter Soldier, and X-Men First Class. He is consistently great, and no one talks about how good he is. The Batman v Superman sound design is fine as well.
Lex wants us.
Sound design-wise, the movie's even out, meaning it's down to the scores again. The score for Batman v Superman was done by Hans Zimmer and Junkie XL. If you followed my videos, you know I'm a sucker for a good, super dramatic Zimmer score. As for Junkie XL, I love his work on Mad Max Fury Road. It honestly seems like sonically they're a good fit for each other and should make something really special. Unfortunately, instead of getting something akin to two greats working together to make something far grayer than they could do by themselves, we got two greats working together to make something that's got some good moments, but overall is less noteworthy than their usual work alone. Henry Jackman's score is really solid, and perhaps even better than his work on The Winter Soldier. Maybe not as good as First Class, but definitely better than Batman v Superman. Point for Marvel. Daniel Bruhl as Helmut Zemo is a classic comic book villain. Here, he is given a reconceptualization as a Sokovian intelligence officer who ran a kill squad. His family was killed when the Avengers battled Ultron in Sokovia during Age of Ultron. He knew he couldn't defeat them, so his plan was to have them defeat themselves. His plan requires a lot of luck if you analyze it too closely, but does work well within the themes of vengeance in this movie. His motivation is solid, and he proves to be a threat to the team not as a brute force, but as a mind smart enough to manipulate the entire team. As you may have guessed, I've saved the best, or rather worst, for last. Jesse Eisenberg is Lex Luthor. Never before have I seen such a good actor do such a bad job. His material isn't even bad. The bit here where he refers to kryptonite as silver bullets is really a great way to phrase the situation.
You don't have to use a silver bullet, but if you forge one, well then, We don't have to depend upon the kindness of monsters.
Sure, it's not accurate since Superman is not a werewolf, but works because it fits Luthor's narrative. He views Superman as a monster, so it also helps put his motivations in perspective. However, the delivery is terrible. This is not a character that anyone could possibly take seriously. Why would the senator listen to this clear madman? He comes off as a man with severe mental disorders who's off his meds. A man that force feeds another man a Jolly Rancher clearly has issues. Why would anyone trust him with what they refer to as a nuclear deterrent? Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that one of the biggest scenes in the movie revolves around a jar of Lex Luthor's piss. I do have issues with Zemo's plan. It seems like it requires a lot of luck, but compared to Lex Luthor, it's the most simple plan ever. I mean, Lex Luthor spends time sending Superman and Batman baiting material to get them to go after each other, and in the end just decides to kidnap Martha Kent and threaten her life unless Superman fights Batman. What's the point of all the baiting if you're just gonna do that anyway? The movie makes a point of explaining to us that this is not Lex Luthor, but rather Lex Luthor Jr.
Man on the marquee. No, don't believe it. My father named the company after himself. He was the Lex in front of the corp. How you doing?
Why? Do they want to introduce another real Lex Luthor later? Do they want to call the company LexCorp and not simply have him rename it when Lionel dies? Do they want to make him a trust fund baby? In many ways, Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor represents everything wrong with this movie. A man with clearly a lot of talent doing everything seemingly wrong. Eisenberg was almost certainly told to play the character like this by Snyder, who probably wanted something similar to a Mark Zuckerberg from the Social Network version of the character. Except he still doesn't understand why the character works in the Social Network. Do I even need to say it? Point for Marvel.
There's a bit of green in the blue of your eyes. How nice to find the flaw.
This wasn't even close. In many ways, Civil War is how you do superheroes fighting each other right, while Batman v Superman is how you do it wrong. Zack Snyder is an enigma as a filmmaker. If you give him a pre-written story with firm visuals already in place like 300 or Watchmen, he can usually knock it out of the park. But if you give him something more nebulous like the decent idea of a story like in Man of Steel, he doesn't know what to do with it. He knows how to make it look cool visually, but not how to use those visuals to help tell his story. He never seems concerned with what his images mean, just how they look. It's a terrible movie, but Sucker Punch best sums up who Zack Snyder is. He's a director with tons of visual flair, but no understanding of how to use his tremendous gifts to tell a story. Batman v Superman feels like a Snyder story, where he just threw stuff in he thought would be cool with no image in his head to the end goal. Let's make Lex Luthor like that Facebook guy. He talks about how Nolan made Batman cool, and how he would make Batman dark, citing the idea of him getting raped in prison. I'm sure Snyder would have no problem doing this, but never once would he think about why this is happening. He would just do it because it was dark and he likes it to be dark. It's abundantly clear that Snyder doesn't understand themes, while it's also clear with Civil War, The Winter Soldier, and Infinity War that the Russo brothers understand themes just fine. Their visuals don't look as cool as Snyder's, but at least they don't abuse them or do things just because they look cool, story be damned.
Okay, so what do you call yourself?
This is
Como
Clark
se
Kent.
llama?
And you?
Where'd you learn to speak the English,
In
Tom?
school. And my father, he was from United States. Yeah, just like you know. He was a Yankee. He used to take me a lot to the movies, you know. I learned. I watched the guys like Humphrey Bogart, James Cagney. They teach me to talk. I like those guys. I always know one day I'm coming here, United States.
Hey, if you like this video, please make sure to hit that like button and go ahead and subscribe. That helps me out a lot. And if you really love this video, consider visiting my Patreon page.